Hey everyone, I am T-Rex, and today I'm doing my review for Pacific Rim. So far I've been reviewing a lot of monster movies so far, and today I decided I'm going to review another monster movie from Legendary Pictures, so I'm going to review Pacific Rim. Anyways, with that out of the way, let's get into my review of Pacific Rim. Anyways, Pacific Rim is a movie from 2013 directed by Guillermo Del Toro, and is a movie about giant mechs fighting huge monsters. This movie stars Charlie Hunnam, Diego Klatenhoff, Idris Elba, Rinko Kikuchi, and Charlie Day. Now, if I mispronounced any of those names, I'm sorry, and I tried, but let's get into the narrative. Now, this narrative follows Charlie Hunnam's character, Raleigh. These names are ridiculous. These names are too hard to pronounce. Anyways, Raleigh, or whatever his name is a Jaeger pilot, and this story follows him coming back to fight kaiju that are coming from the core of the earth, and this is him coming back to be a pilot in one final stop against the kaiju once and for all. And the narrative here is just so much fun. I love the idea of giant mechs fighting humongous monsters, so this story is my jam. I also love the story of the guy who's out to fight, coming back for one last mission. I mean, it's a classic, and it works here very well. The world as well that they build here is really interesting, and I love the way that this film escalates and introduces us to more and more things. The narrative here is just so much fun. I think that the narrative here, while combining familiar stories, is great and puts us in a super interesting world, and while also at the same time coming up with these super awesome, unique, and fantastic concepts. I thought as well that the movie did very well at moving at a very solid pace, and I think this film has an incredible world with an awesome plot and moves at a very strong pace while putting a spin on the series with ideas of this neural handshake and a lot of other cool ideas, so it doesn't feel like a copy and paste of any other random mech vs. monster movie. I thought the narrative and world here were just awesome. Now, if you're watching this movie, you want to see cool mech action, and it's here. These Jaeger vs. Kaiju fights don't really disappoint. I love how both of these enemies have a chance of winning the fight, and I always like that idea. Also, I love how these Jaegers, or mechs if you don't know, the Jaegers are these humongous mechs, but I love how slow they are, and I just love how they're able to do so much damage, but they're able to use a lot of tools and terrain, so they actually stand a chance against these kaiju, which are incredibly strong and just ravage the city. This leads to the fights being like super good, because you know that these humongous mechs need to land every hit, or else they're probably going to end up getting wrecked. These fights are just super good, and my favorite one is that one in the Neon City. I mentioned it in my Godzilla vs. Kong review, but I love this fight. It is amazing. But a problem I think is that I don't think the film's last action fight holds up to the one that was in the Neon City. So this movie kind of loses a bit of momentum towards the end in the action department. Other than that, most of the fights here are just great, but this movie kind of loses some of that steam towards the end of the movie. Now let's get into characters, and this movie doesn't really have great characters. The main character here is just so boring. Raleigh, I think is his name, and I just don't care about him. He was not that interesting, and that's a problem with a lot of these characters. There are also these two Australian guys who were just there as well. I guess they were fine. But these main characters just don't get developed, and they're not that interesting. And when we do get characters that are developed, I just did not like them at all. There's this girl named Mako Mori, and she gets a lot more development, but I just honestly do not like her. I found her character super annoying, and there are things she does in this movie that if I was a character there, I would have been like, "You're fired, get out of here." And I know she gets redemption kind of, but I just did not like her character at all. I do like Idris Elba here. He's able to be a lot more likable than a lot of these characters, but that really isn't because of his character or the writing, but just because Idris Elba is able to give a good performance. Now, the two characters that I actually did kind of like are Charlie's Day character and Burn Gorman's character. These are like these crazy scientists, but they're like the only characters with any personality to connect to. So when it comes to this movie, most of the characters are very boring or barely interesting, other than a few like the two I just mentioned that I kind of like. Now let's talk about the direction by Guillermo Del Toro. I love the look and style that they went for here. I love how slowly these mechs are, but just how deadly they are as well. It leads to these characters having to be precise in their mechs. I think Guillermo Del Toro has a great eye for visuals, and here the visuals do not disappoint. Also, I love the world that he has created, along with this epic soundtrack to go along with it. I mean, have you heard the main theme from Pacific Rim? It rocks. This movie on a whole feels like a love letter to the monsters vs. giants mech genre, and I really think that Guillermo del Toro absolutely nailed what he was going for, and I think he absolutely brought it when it came to style and tone. Now when it comes to this movie, it is mostly style over substance, but here that isn't really a bad thing. The fights are awesome and this is just such a fun narrative and premise. Like, come on, it's giant monsters versus giant robots in a rock'em sock'em arena. It is just so much fun, and it is an interesting story along with building an incredible world that you honestly want to see more stories take place in. The main issue is just the characters. They're not very interesting, and there's only really one character I have a big issue with, but the rest are just so boring, and that kind of hurts the film because a lot of scenes lose tension, especially towards the end, because you don't really care about these characters. That said, the characters don't ruin the film, but they definitely hold it back from its amazing potential. I love basically everything in this movie other than the characters, but if you don't really like huge mechs versus huge monsters, this movie just might not be for you. With that said, I'm going to say that Pacific Rim is great. Anyways, for the recommendations, if you want to see another fantastic monster movie, I recommend Godzilla vs. Kong, which I did a review for if you want to check that out. And if you want another amazing monster movie with better characters, I recommend King Kong by Peter Jackson. What are your thoughts on Pacific Rim? I'd love to hear your thoughts down below. I might be a bit more down on this movie than other people, so I'd love to hear your opinions. Anyways, remember this Friday I'll be ranking all the movies I saw in March, and Saturday I will be reviewing another Guillermo Del Toro movie in Hellboy. When those videos come out, I'll see you then. Bye.